Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Intel Extreme Masters World Championship. As we took a breather, and to be honest, it was necessary after that very first game. It actually physically hurt to watch it at some moments.
It's true.
It is true, but we're going to bounce back here. We have game 2 of Group A. That means it is SK Gaming coming up versus the Yeo Flash Wolves. And let's start by taking a look again at that bracket for Group A after we played out our first game. And the GE Tigers were, of course, victorious. That means that they'll be moving on to the winner match later on. And Cloud9 has to defend their honor a bit later on as well. Now it has SK Gaming versus the Yeo Flash Wolves coming in, which it's going to be a closer game straight off the bat.
I think so. I mean, if you look at the playstyles, for the people who haven't watched, let's say, SK Gaming and the Yeo Flash Wolves, so SK Gaming is all about 1-3-1 split pushing. Very, very strong early game coming in. You can see it in the pick and ban phase. Graves is the most played AD carry. Freddy always getting a bit of a lane pull in the top lane. And obviously Assassins in the mid lane for SK. So they win every single lane, take you out of turrets, and they just push you into a corner over and over. The Flash Wolves, however, is a little bit different. A lot of focus on like kite composition from them, a bit like GE Tigers like to run. And then it's all about Mabel in this mid lane. He's the big star player. Once he gets a lead, he starts roaming with Cast out of jungle and sort out the support. So those 3 guys, if they get an early lead, they can shut down SK Gaming here. So the early game will be very important.
You mentioned the... Yeah.
I want to touch on SK just really quickly because, yes, they do this, but they do this every single time. So for NL, as long as they can match SK mechanically and actually win their laning phase, that's how SK has lost their games in the past, when they're not allowed to dictate the early game. So for the Flash Wolves, it's going to be all about coming out the gates with strong laners. I think that's very important, and making sure they've got wave clear, because if they can delay or slow down those early towers, SK can't do that traditional 1-3-1.
Now, we have heard from the Flash Wolves themselves that they are heavily prepared for this matchup, and seeing as how SK has been somewhat one-dimensional in their strategy, this leads me to believe that they're going to have a really solid draft against him. And as you mentioned, Quickshot, they have to be ready to meet SK mechanically to be able to beat this team. And to be honest, with the 1-3-1 strategy, Forgiven is the key in taking down these towers. The early Graves with the BF swords getting a lot of farm and then just being able to bully out any laner. If you go for a 2v2, the Janna Kaylin, take the tower before SK can take the tower. Now all of a sudden, SK find themselves in the back foot in terms of the tower game, and that could be a strategy. But if a lane swap is to happen, SK's greediness with Freddy might just pay off.
We will see. Let's take a look at the lineup for SK Gaming. As you mentioned, Freddy, of course, is a strongholder there in the top lane. Then we have Svenskeren, Fox, Forgiven, and their support and Rated. That's the lineup for SK Gaming. We have come to know and love for their 8-0 winning streak over in EU, but then they dropped 3 games, and although they bounced back in the last couple of games, there were some vulnerabilities exposed for that team in the last couple of weeks.
There was, but there's 2 very important things to take note. After bouncing back from that 3-game losing streak, Forgiven in an interview actually said, we needed to lose those games for the team mindset and for us to actually go through some struggles. And then also very importantly, when we heard from Freddy talking about their vision in the last week, this is a team who traditionally, who has consistently underwarded. SK Gaming is very, very aggressive. They use their champions as living wards. They're able to get away with it locally in Europe, but it is a glaring, glaring weakness. And it was good to hear them say, we acknowledge it, but now it's important to see whether they can implement it in game.
Yeah, and that's going to be so important in this game here, because we just mentioned how Flash Wolves, they like to roam around the map a lot. And if you don't have the wards to spot them, you will get surprised. And if you keep just pushing your lanes over and over, like SK Gaming will do, they are so greedy. They care only about their own items, not what the enemy team is building. So if they can get a lead by just pushing a tower down, they will. That's where the Flash Wolves can come in and punish them and kill them.
One of the things that you mentioned that I really liked about SK is the fact that they're all on the same page in their itemization. Yeah. They always buy items for the at the moment power spike. So they're not going to save up and get the BS sword later. They're going to get the Youmu's right there so that they can all be really strong consistently. And that's a style that works if everybody's on the same page, which is why this 1-3-1 style works. And if you're not prepared against it and you have not faced it before, it is a higher risk, higher reward style. If it succeeds, you all of a sudden, you get 3 towers instead of 1.
Now, let's take a look at the opponents for SK Gaming, Yeo Flash Wolves, and their lineup in the top lane. It is Stake, jungling Karsa, Maple in the mid lane, and NL and Swordart is their lineup. 4 of those 5 names have actually attended the World Championship under the Gamma Bears, not their jungler though. And well, they're fighting TPA in the LMS to be the #1 team, and they've shown some very good games.
Yeah, they really have. But the difficulty is how strong are they internationally? Because if you look at the LMS, it's kind of a league of 2 leagues. Top 4 teams are miles ahead of the bottom 4 teams. NL in particular, as well as Casa and Maple, they have some interesting itemization, interesting builds. Jungle, Rek'Sai, second item, Trinity Force, Tiamat, third item, Jungle, Nidalee, first item, Lichbane. When you can be so far ahead that this type of itemization isn't punished, it does say a lot about your team. But what it also says is, as a squad, Flash Wolves are very aggressive. If they have a lead and they can go all in damage, they will. It makes them exciting to watch. And like Crumb said to us as well, as a team, they're fighting to prove they belong at the top of the tables. There's a lot of fan support for TPA, the rival at the top of the LMS. A good showing here for the Flash Wolves could garner some local pride back home.
For sure. The problem is just when you look at Flash Wolves and their setup compared to like SK Gaming, Mabel again, he's the big star in the mid lane, massive champion pool, can outplay you mechanically, and they want to get him fit. Casa goes in there and ganks the jungler for him, and they're pretty good synergy together. Once they get a lead in the mid lane, they roam down to the bottom lane where Never Lose or NL and Sword Art are, and then they take a tower there, and that's again how they create the lead. They don't really help out Stake too much in the top lane. There's a reason for it, because Stake, sadly, is the weak link on this team. He's not a very strong top laner. He has a fairly small champion pool that he's successful on. Like Aurelia is probably his best champion. I expect SK Gaming to ban that one away. And we have seen teams in the past take advantage of Stake, beat him in the laning phase. And the problem is, again, when you face SK, if one lane falls behind, well, then you know whoever he's laning against is going to be super strong from SK Gaming side, and he's going to keep pushing it down. And suddenly you got to send 2 guys up to stop, let's say, Freddy in this case, and suddenly the bottom lane is open. Forgiven is going to take that tower. And that's going to be such a big problem. If they don't help Stake, or potentially lane swap, even though LMS, or we can say Flash Wolves, not exactly the strongest lane swap team. When we've seen it in the past, often Stake falls super far behind in these swaps because they kind of ignore him again. That's such a problem for them. They're going to have to play standard lanes, honestly, and hope that Stake can handle his own in the one-on-one, because the focus is on Maple in the mid lane, and then on Never Lose and Sword Art to do their job in the 2-on-2 in the bottom lane.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just very quickly, Stake against Freddy is the mismatch. And I also think stylistically, Enrated versus Sword Art's quite different. Enrated's not known for his roaming ganks into multiple lanes. Sword Art, on the other hand, does tend to hold hands with the jungler as well as mid lane. So we'll see whether or not the play of Sword Art can help counterbalance the weakness of Stake.
I do believe that Crumbs heard that Sword Art has, or NL says that Sword Art has saved his life multiple times because he's so good at supporting them. And versus that lane and versus Forgiven, especially if it comes to the standard lanes, it's going to be the task for them.
That's right. And one of the things that I want to go a little bit back upon as well is the fact that the NLS region, or the Taiwanese region, has always had the urge to prove themselves. And I feel like globally, they've always been undersold. In every international event that they've gone to, they've actually surpassed the expectations at last year's Worlds, the previous IEM events. They've always done a lot better than we expected to, and I expect to see the same thing here.
Yeah, also here we see the Yeo Flash Wolves just, they look happy, they look confident in their matchup backstage, and as they should be, because even though the fan vote, who we're going to look at in a second, they're calling for SK Gaming, it is, for you guys, a lot closer.
I think it is a lot closer, but we're not talking 50-50. I think if I'm going to be fair, I think it's more like 66% likely that SK should win, in theory. But it's also a little unfair because, like Crumbs mentioned, we are underselling LMS because we simply haven't seen these guys recently.
Yeah.
You know, Gamma Bears, like you mentioned, didn't have the best showing, but that is a long time ago. It is a very long time ago. So we need to see what Flash Wolves have done. And again, also acknowledge SK have some very, very clear, relatively easy to exploit weaknesses. Relatively.
Yeah. The thing about SK is, and the reason, I think SK is going to win. I think overall they will be the strongest team between these two guys, or between these two teams here. My problem with SK is, if they play 10 games, I would never say they're going to win all 10. Because they have these problems where if they make a mistake in the laning phase, especially down towards the bottom lane, and Forgiven and Enrated falls behind, that stops the whole split push and strategy from SK. H2K back in Europe managed to do it. They killed them in the laning phase, took the tower, and they were the ones snowballing the entire game, and SK just sat back and did nothing. So you can punish mistakes from SK Gaming side, and because the strategy is so simple, it's also easy to shut down unless you start falling behind. So I said easy. Let's just say if you don't fall behind, you can shut it down.
And one thing that they also have to do is be respectful of their opponents. As said, Joey Flash Wolves have been here for a while. They heard from their manager that they have been playing versus Korean teams. SK Gaming got here yesterday, so we can only assume that they just played the European teams, or maybe we haven't got insight in that. But Joey Flash Wolves definitely, with a clear game plan, SK can't underestimate them.
Well, watching their play style, they always seem to go for the really bold play, and that is a psychological game in the sense that you see somebody making a play and you think, is there something else? Like, do they have backup? And that can throw the Flash Wolves heavily off guard.
We'll see in a minute. And for now, we're going to meet the teams over on stage. So take it away, Chobra.
Thank you very much, Shocks, and we are here once again for another match. If you thought that last game was action-packed, you have no idea what's waiting this weekend. So many more games, starting with the next one. A true battle of regional pride, as we have the first seeds of two very strong regions coming in here for the Intel Extreme Masters. First up, it's going to be from Europe, one of the oldest brands in League of Legends, and with this new roster taking that #1 seed of Europe, we have SK Gaming! And the expert said it, but can they do it again? Knocking down the crowd favorites in the Taiwanese region for that #1 seed. We have the challengers coming up, the Yeo Flash Wolves! And I think we're all ready for some more action on Summer's Rift. So let's get right back to the expert decks for the picks and bans.
Thank you so much, Chobra. And as we see there, SK Gaming will be on the blue side for this one. Joey Flash Wolves on the red side. What will that give them in terms of priority in SK Gaming's plan?
Well, first of all, it means Svensson can get his hands on Rek'Sai, a champion he's obviously been used quite a lot. Otherwise, he goes for Nidalee. So it means for Joey Flash Wolves, either you trade the two OP junglers at the moment, Rek'Sai and Nidalee, or you just simply ban both of them away, which is not a good thing because there are other things you want to target. I wouldn't be surprised to see them look towards the mid lane. LeBlanc has been great. Zed has been super important. Freddy, you don't really ban him out. He has too many champions up there. And again, Kasa and Svensson, they share the same champion pool. So it's not like you gain too much by double banning Svensson. And I feel like maybe you just trade the two OP junglers.
I actually think that one of the things that will benefit the Flash Wolves is targeting Svenskeren and forcing him to pick a Rengar. Now, he has seen success on this champion, but it does slow down the early game of SK, and that will allow you to snowball a little bit better.
Problem is, he's just going to go Lee Sin. I mean, he has no reason to go Rengar. He used to be a Lee Sin main player. We saw Lee in the last game here say, okay, you ban the OP junglers, Lee Sin for me. Fantastic early game. Jarvan can challenge him with the armor nerfs to his E. Simply, there's enough picks for both the junglers, honestly. I think more you might look towards Sword Art on...
Vigo's not viable anymore.
True, yeah,
Vigo's been drawing bans almost every single game in recent weeks against Sword Art, and the Flash Wolves not as useful, let's say, in 5.4, but there are a number of other engaged supports, which, let's also be honest, Enrater is not particularly strong on. His Annie, his Leona, they have been left... you've been left wanting whenever you've seen him play those, but Enrater can always fall back to that Lulu pick, which is something that has worked well for SK in the past. So you've also got a clash of styles in terms of the supports there.
But that's the thing, it's a bit weird though with Sword Art, because yes, he can be the engage because he's very good with skill shots in terms of like playing Morgana, but his main style is normally like full disengage focused, and that's again, Morgana is his main pick. I feel like that should be banned away by SK Gaming, or early picked if they wanted for like Freddy, or of course Enrated in the bottom lane. That champion itself is also where he can roam around, and that's where it gets scary, so I feel like that should be a ban.
Yeah, indeed. And Trevor, you were saying maybe about Fox. He is untested on this biggest of stages. That might be a ban strategy as well from the Joey Flash Wolves.
It'll be interesting to see, because in terms of the experience, Freddie, Sven are the shot callers of SK Gaming. Every single time we've listened to this team and their communication and their calls and their team fighting, it is Sven that is dishing out the orders, and it is Freddie going, I can join, I'll be late, I can TP now, do we want to do this? So Freddie tends to play this voice of reason in terms of their team communication. Whether or not that's going to be enough to keep Fox in line, that's really what I want to see. I think Forgiven is so driven, he's going to step onto the stage and he's going to try and knock it out the house. But for Fox, let's see. If he can get his hands on LeBlanc, he's comfy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's been his best champion. In terms of top lane bans, we mentioned before how Stake is the weak link of Yeo Flash Wolves. Irelia, honestly, has been his best champion. You can ban that one away. It's the most banned champion by SK Gaming back in Europe, so I don't see why they wouldn't go for this when he's on the blue side. To remove that one, suddenly Stake is left to play a tank, which probably is the best for him. But again, he's so often so weak in the early game. That's where Freddy, playing, let's say, Lissandra, is going to take full advantage of that and simply just win the game. So unless they want to ban Lissandra on the side of Yeo Flash Wolves, Freddy's going to have a free lane.
I want to side with you with the Aurelia ban just because when she starts going and split pushing, she would eventually just be able to beat out one of the 1-3-1 picks from SK and nullify the strategy to a certain degree. But the Morgana pick for top lane is not one that I want to see SK playing. I want to see them pick a really heavily abusing top laner and pick on the weak link of the Flash Wolves and snowball from that.
So what they normally do when they do have Morgana top lane for Freddy is they simply just push the lane all the time and they slowly take the tower, and then once the tower is down, he puts down the pole, the wave pushes into the tier 2 tower, and he just walks down to mid lane and joins. It's not the split pushing monster, you're going to kill him one-on-one. It's more just push the wave and have like wave management and wave control and then apply pressure by joining the fights. So it is a viable strategy for them, but I feel like you are right. The ones where Freddy can really carry is the better ones.
Well, Deficio and Crumbs, we're going to jump into picks and bans in a moment or two with SK on the blue side, Flash Wolves on the red side. We thought that the junglers might be contested. We thought there might be some pressure there from the teams. You can already see Nidalee off the table. Graves taken away from Forgiven, his most played, most successful AD carry, and Maokai in reply against Stake.
Yeah, so we've seen Graves being banned a few times against Forgiven in Europe. Normally, though, teams just give it to him because they know he's going to lock it in and they're trying to like swap around it maybe or get to late game instead where Graves is slightly weaker. In this case here, Yeo Flash Wolves don't want to risk losing that early game, so they simply take away that Graves on their side. And Zed, we mentioned the mid lane power.
Rek'Sai
first.
Right off the bat,
right there.
absolutely drawing the LeBlanc ban, must ban, banning the Zed, a great matchup for Zed against the LeBlanc, and then SK banning the Ahri, so you have to now ban the LeBlanc, otherwise it would be first picked by SK and having a huge mismatch in the mid lane. But as a result, with the forced LeBlanc ban, now they get a free Rek'Sai.
So Rek'Sai is locked in. The question is, Yeo Flash Wolves would have known this. Did they want this matchup? What do they have to counter or play against a Rek'Sai? Because you knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if Kasa is going to play Lee Sin. He's not a champion we've seen him often on. I mean, Jarvan has been his go-to pick. They can go for like Jarvan, have a very strong teamfight composition where Rek'Sai often needs a bit more help to set up, you know, the engages in a fight compared to Jarvan. But I want to see the trade-off here because Caitlyn is not going to be a contested pick. When Graves is gone, Forgiven will always go for Lucian for himself. So it's not like you take anything away from the AD carry here. And this now as well, Freddy has played it, but he's not been his main champion. He can go Lissandra here and have a fantastic laning phase for himself, dive onto that Caitlyn in the fights, and SK Gaming suddenly have a fantastic setup just from 2 picks.
Right off the bat with the Gnar and the Caitlyn, you know that the Flash Wolves are going to be going for a more late game teamfight oriented composition. With the Rek'Sai, they're going to be benefiting SK from the skirmishing style that they want to go. So right off the bat, the jungler is the key in accelerating the game in the tower pushing scenario, which is what SK wants. So I really disagree with letting the SK lineup have a Rek'Sai. And to be honest, a Zed LeBlanc ban, I mean, maybe they're looking for a Xerath in the mid lane. Wouldn't surprise me because there is no longer an assassin on the table for SK.
The weird thing is just how you ban Graves to take Caitlyn. Caitlyn beats Graves in the laning phase early on before they go back for the BF sword. So you could have just let him get that Graves, get the 2-on-2 lane and fast push it down. NL and Sword are very good at fast pushing their lane. And again, once they get a lead in the mid lane with Maple, he's the guy roaming down to the bottom lane. You take the first few auto turrets and that's how you start the game. And then obviously you aim for late game later with the Caitlyn. Yeah, it is expected, gives you a very strong laning phase. We talk about Flash Wolves, they don't want to lose early. They have obviously scouted SK Gaming, so good early picks for them. But there's the Lucian for Forgiven, and he's more than happy picking that one.
Forgiven really favors the mobile AD carries. Anything with a dash, anything can get him in and out aggressively. We're going to see Freddy playing the Hecarim. Hecarim, a champion that has not been particularly popular in Europe, but we have seen it played elsewhere in other regions. But if anybody's going to pick it up and play it effectively, it's going to be Freddy.
Yeah, I mean, Hecarim is a split-pushing monster who has fantastic TPs to use as well to join his team. So it fits right in SK Gaming's playstyle here. Win your lane, you keep pushing it down, and you just go back and get your home guards, and you just join the fight. Like, this is fantastic for SK, and they're roaming 1-3-1 style, so it's a good pick.
I think the biggest thing here has to be that the 2v2 from SK with the Ignite and Hecarim and on Rek'Sai is going to be any 2v2 that the Flash Wolves can throw at them, which is what we touched upon earlier, that they put Freddy on a really heavy carry champion, and off the bat, they're in a mismatch in the top lane. We see this there, going for that team fighting comp, long range with the Rengar engage, but you're making your early game extremely vulnerable with this draft.
I would have preferred a Jarvan in that scenario. What I would like to touch on, what do SK use to round out their team comp? They're lacking some magic damage with mostly, it's kind of mixed Hecarim to be fair, but a lot of physical as well as Lucian and Rek'Sai.
They have done Orianna before, or...
There we go.
Yeah, there
we talked about Diana. Deficio, I know you've prepared stuff for Diana in the mid lane. Fox is pulling it out.
Oh, I expected a few teams to maybe pick it up. She got a few changes lately, and her laning phase, while it's not terrible, she's fine like 1 to 5 and just sitting and farming. She won't be killing the Xerath, but once she hits level 6, you are so good at setting up ganks, especially with Rek'Sai, with a TP Hecarim or just a guy roaming from the lane down to this mid lane here. They can set up so many picks in the lane. And also Diana, she fits really well with the current meta in terms of the items she builds. Like you often see Abyssal Zeptor or like Hourglass first item on mid laners, and that's right in her alley. That's what she likes to build normally. So she's become this like semi-tank bruiser AP that can really get in the backline late game. So this Xerath here, unless we see a massive disengaged support like Janna, will die in every single fight when a Hecarim Diana says, okay, there you are, killed.
Now, right off the bat, we predicted that the Flash Wolves would go for a really strong 2v2 lane. They have run it in the past. The Janna Kaylin, it's going to come out, Janna Kaylin, but here's a fun fact, though. The quality of life buff to Diana means that her ultimate can no longer be disjointed, so she's always going to be able to get that reset in, which means that Janna is not going to be as impactful to the Diana as we had seen previously in other patches.
So I want to see how Yeo Flash Wolves will play here. Yes, they have a very strong bottom lane, but Lulu is one of the best supports level 1 to 3 in terms of her damage. So SK Gaming, what they will always do is they're gonna go down, do Crooks at level 1, get the XP advantage, walk into lane and start pushing and trading with you. If they're not ready, they're gonna fall behind. And if a Caitlyn falls behind and doesn't win her laning phase, she becomes oh so useless in the mid game, where Lucian shines. Forgiven is so good at using that advantage. So it's going to be all about the bottom lane. It's going to be all about this early game here.
Now we'll see SK Gaming getting their hands on a strong draft and a Diana on the Rift in just a few when we come back with the game.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Intel Extreme Masters World Championship. We're about to get into our second game between SK Gaming and the Yeo Flash Wolves. SK, the big favourites in this game. But what do we think, before we get into game, about the compositions that both teams have managed to pull out here?
I thought it was really interesting that we saw the Zed, Ahri, and LeBlanc fall by the Wade side, because they have been some of the most prominent champions on both of the mid laners in this series. So the Diana is an interesting reaction, but it's another very mobile, all-in-ish kind of champion that you can play, and has some split pushing potential as well. So it will be interesting to see how this one goes. More players have been picking up Diana overall. I've noticed a trend in Korean solo queue as well.
Yeah, well, SK Gaming on the blue side this game, Yeo Flash Wolves on the red side. I'm excited about SK Gaming's comp. It's like the Lulu Dream comp, man. That makes Doa excited.
Gonna be a fun one, that's for sure. I'm a little bit worried for SK Gaming in terms of confidence for this game, maybe overconfidence, but also Fox looked a little bit nervous coming out onto the stage there, and he's probably the player in this team where, you know, N-rated and even Freddy at this point might be looking at them and saying, you need to chill. And, you know, Monty's pointing at my screen right now because, well, Fox forgot to buy a trinket.
Speaking of nerves, yeah, I mean, it's a big stage for him to be on, and forgetting that trinket is just one of those things that happens. So I'm sure he'll notice. There we go. There's it. Well, no, maybe he hasn't noticed.
No, I think he's probably noticed right now. And if we do talk about some of these compositions, I think the Xerath is a great pickup in this situation, at least for the laning phase, because they have that wave clear. And we know how aggressive SK likes to play. They really enjoy pushing up those lanes, and they've got the wave clear as well. Caitlyn does have a dip in the mid game in terms of power, picks it back up late. But you know, we've talked, a lot of our analysts here have talked to Clement Chu, who's one of the main analysts from the time when he's seen. And they really do like to press these lanes, the Yeo Flash Wolves, and then swap the AD and support into Stake's lane. Stake typically takes a hit in terms of his CS, and that goes over just for map control and outer towers.
One other important thing when we're talking about Stake taking a hit, his magnificent afro has also taken a bit of a hit.
That's true.
He's got rid of the sides. He's only got like a top afro. I'm not sure if that's a technical hairdressing term for what's going on there.
It's like a very thick mohawk, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know if you. Maybe.
I could settle for that.
Yeah,
apparently his teammates were saying that he seems to have lost some of his power after going under the knife for that one. So we'll see how that all works out for him. We see here the starts from Freddy. Going a little bit low on the Raptors, but that won't be much of a problem. He's recalling for the first time.
And this is the typical SK lane swap right here. In fact, I'm kind of surprised Joey didn't have a different level 1 warding strategy, because that's the dangerous thing that SK likes to do, is for Freddy to go for those Raptors. And if you have a ward right there, he becomes extremely easy to kill. We talked about Joey saying they had prepared a lot for this match, and for me, that's a critical ward.
Well, I mean, the big thing to worry about with SK, right, is that huge pushing power that Forgiven has, and they tried to stop it. If they would have gotten a 2v2 lane, I think Caitlyn Jana would have been able to stall that one out for a long time. But like you said, Monty, it looked like SK got that lane swap that they wanted. And how fast can they push that top turret down? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, it's also the Doran's Blade start for Stake right here is a bit of a risky item, especially if the lane swap does come into play. Like it has, you have to land those autos to get the sustain off, and it's going to be really quite brutal for Stake in this environment. We do see him recalling right now. He will come back to lane, most likely with that teleport, but he can't miss out on this wave, and Sword Art will be moving in there to give him a hand.
Yep, there's the teleport. He's going to get right back up there, so at least he'll get some speed and CS out of it. But Forgiven and N-rated already doing a lot of damage to that top turret, so far, whatever plan the Flash Wolves have is not really being too effective.
Or being shown, I would say, as well at this point. I mean, they've gone into standard lanes. Stake again down to half HP as he comes back in there. And see, if Svenskog gets involved on that top side, especially if they see where Carstitch, which they just have, that could be a little dangerous for them. And again, just a quick blast out of Forgiven, out of N-rated as well. And Stake playing a dangerous game there on that top side.
I don't even know what Sword Art is doing right now. He's just hovering around in the top side jungle. Thought he'd be going over to give Stake a hand, at least in the laning phase, but that hasn't actually happened. And now he's just walking all the way back across the map. Does drop a pink ward in the mid lane, but that was a lot of time where the support really wasn't much of a factor.
I thought maybe he was worried about a dive or something like that. But
I thought maybe they were going to try and bait a dive right there, but even so, that is just really, really risky, and Stake continues to take all of this damage, and that push going heavily in favor of SK Gaming right now. They're very comfortable playing this style. Of course, we see N-rated with his top pick champion this season. And I'm surprised that it is this easy for SK.
As Fox going a little bit aggressive, maybe too much so there. Actually taking a good blast back from Maple. As we see a lot of pings going down around the middle. Rengar's also headed onto the top side of the map. So let's see if Karsa can actually get involved. Won't be spotted by a ward. Also is only level 3 at this point. Looks like he's actually just on his way up top.
Yeah, that's right, going to take those Krugs, but I think there's going to be a ton of pressure onto Sword Art in the latter parts of the game because you've got so much dive from SK. You know, how in the world are they going to keep people off of Xerath and Caitlyn?
It's going to be really difficult. They don't have the best peeling. Now, Karsa, of course, is known for his Rengar play, and so it is a comfort pick for him, and they need to start getting something rolling here in the early game. But keeping Maple alive is going to be a big problem. That said, it is on to Freddy to get the TP home guard engages that will help him and his team win outright here, because it's a difficult thing to do. Sword Art getting caught out a bit.
Yeah, in a little bit of trouble. Gets pushed back by Freddy, and I think he's going to be just fine with that. Yeah. NL able to get a decent amount of autos, but when you're playing Caitlyn, that's just kind of inevitable anyway.
But Svenskeren doing the right thing right here, helping push out that wave. SK is just playing for the tower advantages, and this is one of the things that SK does, is Svenskeren is not afraid to show himself in lane just to control pressure and minion waves like that. And it is a bit risky, of course. By giving that information, you do make opportunities for cross-map play from the other junglers, but in this case, by holding them at bay, they're going to get the tower on this wave.
Yep, that one goes down. First one of the game here for SK. And that will put them into a decent little gold lead. No first blood as of yet. No real action when it comes to kills. If you look down some of the farms, Stake managing to keep a lead over Freddy, as you'd probably expect with the fact that he does have a bit of range, at least up until his tower went down there. And this is an interesting move now from the Flash Wolves, knowing that that top tower's gone down. AD carry and support are still in that top lane. Let's go for a dragon.
Yeah, they're pushing this up really aggressively right now. I'm surprised that we didn't see it, the recall coming in sooner, because right now, SK has this opportunity to control. If they do have the wave pushing back, they can simply send Hecarim up to the top side and get Freddy more ahead right here and make sure that this Hecarim is consistently able to split push, because that's the big key with Hecarim, is getting that Trinity Force is so incredibly useful on that champion. Here we go.
Well, Maple taking a lot of damage from Fox, but it doesn't look like he's able to quite get the connection he wants to for the all-in. I feel like he maybe had a chance there, but the thing is he doesn't really know where the junglers are at the moment, so it's a little bit too dangerous to go all the way in. Either way, more pushing from SK. I mean, Fox doing his part to get his damage done onto that turret.
Stake again being forced back on this top side. Still having that lead over Freddy, picking himself up the chain vest there, so obviously was feeling a little bit of pressure and wanted to stay in that top side of the map a little longer, which obviously that chain vest will help out with. Svenskeren also on the bottom side of the map there, taking the crab, and then Rated's heading down bottom, looking like they will be switching things up here. So Forgiven and Enrated will be heading down bottom as Maple again jumped on by Fox, but he's just toying with him at this point.
I wonder what that chain vest is for, actually, if he's going to try and build an early Sunfire as a possible counterplay to Hecarim split pushing. It's a very unusual first item on a Gnar, so... But of course, with the Gnar nerfs coming in, we haven't seen much Gnar.
Yeah, I mean, in the Korea region that we normally cast, the Gnar has pretty much just gone away, and the few that have tried it have failed pretty miserably. So yeah, we'll see what Stake's got planned for this Gnar here. And yeah, an early Sunfire Cape could potentially do some damage in team fights if he's able to sort of sit on top of NL and sort of protect him from the people coming in, potentially push them away with the ult. I suppose you could arguably say that Gnar's a bit more peel, but it seems pretty awkward either way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it may be just for the split pushing. We will see what it gets built into, though. I am curious. There are, of course, more than one option to deal with this Freddy. So he starts split pushing in the mid lane.
Okay.
So Yeo actually playing this pretty defensively. Stake happy just to sit there and pick up the CS, and this is going to give SK some opportunities to get into the enemy jungle, apply the pressure elsewhere.
Yeah, that blue buff here going down quickly. Actually, TP coming in here from Steak. What can they do with this one? There's a jump in from Carter. Fox down to half HP. Steak actually flashed upon there by Svenskeren for the knockup. Steak will get a good ulti off, and here comes the 18-0 from the side. This is looking decent for Yoey. There goes Xerath out. First blood will actually land on Carter, and the rest of the team still pushing in. There was an ignite down that killed off Steak there in the end, but look how low SK go in this fight. Carter's still full HP, but a little bit reluctant to push through. In the end, it's a 2-for-1 in favor of SK.
Wow, just so close at the end of that fight in terms of cleaning people up. That could have gone very badly in the end. Actually, Stakes Engage right there coming in with the Rage did make some sense right there, and he does actually get that Mega Gnar off at the right time. Forgiven gets onto NL on the side, and that's a nice knockback, triple stun. Forgiven with the heal and the block on the ultimate. Unfortunately for Yoey, they just don't have Xerath there. If Xerath is here, that is a very, very different fight. And one that Yoey certainly would have won after Stakes set up the big ultimate.
Well, yeah, even the ultimate from Maple, too, is able to do a lot of damage. So that combined with Xerath's regular abilities might have been a little bit scarier for SK. Forgiven, though, got a nice little duel opportunity against NL, too, when he came over the wall. And that was very good, keeping Caitlyn out of the fight for most of it.
Also, trying to block right there, the Caitlyn ult was very critical to how that went down. Good use of Summoner Heal and then flashing right out into safety as well. Impressive positioning from Forgiven for sure, but we've come to expect that from him, really.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I mean, with Graves banned out, makes sense to pick Lucian. It's got a lot of similar characteristics in terms of like how you can play out those fights.
Couple of wards being cleared out. Interestingly enough, SK, we heard hearing earlier on, you know, that problem that they've had with actually warding the map. Looked like they were trying to get those deeper wards in there. Started off the blue, almost went a little bit wrong for them after all. So we'll see how that one works out. But if you look at the minimap, certainly looking better for SK Gaming in terms of vision than it is for the Yeo Flash Wolves at this point. Still a minute and a half for Dragon, so Fox and Svenskeren maybe looking to get in onto that bottom lane, but there's still a tower there, so that'll prove to be a little more difficult.
Oh, can Carson defend this? Not quite, but Freddy might be in a little bit of trouble. There's a nice slow coming in from Maple. The damage loaded on. There's the stun with the E, and that's an easy kill for the Flash Wolves. Freddy, was the pink ward worth it, man? Meanwhile, a dive going on in the bot lane. NL in trouble. Svenskeren comes in for an easy kill there with the knockup. So SK answering 1-for-1 there.
Yeah, it was a good answer, but the thing is, SK could have made that play regardless because they knew exactly where Rengar was. Yeah. So Freddy really didn't have to die right there. I guess he thought he could maybe make it out with his ultimate into the Baron pit or something like that. But when you have no support on that side of the map and you're dealing with a champion that can become invisible like Rengar, it's so risky to go ahead and clear out those wards when you know he's coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Fox doesn't know he's coming in. Bowler will miss, but the ultimate should be good. This might be enough damage. The second bowler did land there, and Carcer is able to pick himself up his third kill. But SK Gaming, their reply to that is to push out and take that bottom tower.
Typical SK reply, just go for the towers, go for the pressure every single time. And the thing about Rengar is, yes, we do see Karsa stacking up those kills in the early game, but he really does fall off pretty hard late. You have to be able to find flanks for him to initiate these team fights, and he may not offer the peel that's necessary, but we do see the downsides to Diana. She's a pretty binary champion. She only goes in and like attacks. There's not a lot of subtlety to her play, and she is very vulnerable in that laning phase, and one of the most prone champions to get ganked on, unless you can somehow like lunar rush to your Raptors if they happen to be up. It's one of the few ways you can actually get out of that situation.
Yeah, very true. Dragon's back up again, and it looks like for now, Yeo Flash Wolves have a bit more vision. SK trying to push back and grab a bit more territory themselves. And it looks like they'll be able to. They're going to start that Dragon right away. Wow, all of the Yeo Flash Wolves are right there. This seems a little bit dangerous. The damage from Maple's going to be scary, but it looks like SK, are they going to get this Dragon? They will, but now they might have to fight Stake. He's not in Mega Gnar anytime soon. And whoa, what an ult coming in from Freddy. Can SK capitalize? There's a good ult in response from Sword Art. SK is going to have to back away. Sword Art really saving the day there on that one.
The damage just isn't there yet from Yeo. I'm actually very surprised they went for that dragon play in the first place. They already got that first dragon in the game. It is unnecessary at this point in time to go for any more, especially when you have free farm up in the top lane, or maybe even pushing down the top lane tier 1. You can send that resource up there. Janna, Caitlyn are great at fast pushing. Yeo Flash Wolves know how to fast push. You take towers right now, give up the drag.
Yeah, absolutely. Try to push up that mid lane just a bit, but SK was able to respond and be there. And so, despite that little bit of a gold lead for SK, I think the big story here is just getting those early turrets, equalizing that dragon.
Yeah, I'm playing no real difference to what we expected and what you'd imagine Yeo also expected from this one. So
yeah, very
we'll see how
SK
their plan kind of develops from this point onwards. As Maple just getting himself a full wave, is ahead currently of Fox in terms of CS, but that kill for Fox will obviously be working in his favor. Actually, their gold is pretty much bang even. There's about 5 gold that Maple has extra over the top of Fox at this point. So Yeo again, 3 men in mid. They've got Caitlyn down the bottom lane, but again, they're going to have to, at some point in the very near future, deal with Freddy, who's already pushing on towards that inner turret.
Yeah, he's getting close to that Trinity Force as well. And if we look, this Caitlyn is in a huge power drop right now.
Yeah.
She is not going to be relevant for another 10 to 15 minutes at this stage. And the only thing she's going to be able to do is push towers. And we still see her playing so far back in the lane that you really have a difficult time playing a defensive game against SK like this. This is exactly the scenario that they want. We have the 1-3-1 split push right here. In fact, SK has a lot of versatility in how they develop their split push. Not only do they have Rek'Sai, who can split push very effectively and instantly join teamfights with the Void Rush, they have the teleport. Hey, Diana can split push too, and then Lucian and Lulu will be able to clear out those waves. So SK is getting everything they want this game. They are not uncomfortable in the least, and you can't let them play this way because they dominate with this style. It's weird for the current meta. It does have its flaws. It is exploitable. And here we go.
Karza coming in on N-rated. That combined with the Xerath ult is almost enough. They force the ultimate out of N-rated. Meanwhile, the culling pushes back Sword Art and the rest of the Flash Wolves. So for now, no more action in the river, but Freddy pushed out of the top lane by Stake for now. He's going to be able to defend his turret a little bit, but you really have to wonder how this game would look if the Yeo Flash Wolves had gotten the 2v2 like they wanted, had been able to use that Caitlyn to push back the Lucian Lulu.
Yeah, I mean, SK intentionally avoiding that situation, though, because they played the map better early, and Svenskeren was there to prevent the minion waves from pushing down that turret and getting that fast pressure off. And even though really, Caitlyn, Janna having that fast push advantage, the way Svenskeren played the map was significantly better early on to prevent that from happening. And SK playing the fast push game better, even though they have, I think, a less ideal duo lane for that in the early game.
There's a ward for Castle on the top side. You were right, by the way, with the Sunfire Cape choice there for Stake, picking that one up. Trinity Force, though, has now been done for Freddy on his last recall. He's just trotting back up into that top lane. And will continue to do what's been working out so well for them up until this point. Of course, Abyssal Scepter done for Fox in the mid lane quite a while ago, as was the Morel Anomicon for Maple. The big difference there, obviously, again, you look at the AD carries. I mean, NL deciding to stick in the Avarice Blade there in between the, rather than just rushing straight out to finish off that Infinity Edge. On the other side, Forgiven already got his Infinity Edge and an Avarice Blade as well, with both on those tier 2 boots.
Well, NL, you kind of wonder what the plan is here, because he's kind of like, well, maybe I'll just get the static shift and push. It's like, oh, maybe I'll get the Infinity Edge and then I can teamfight. But he's kind of done a little bit of both. And like you mentioned earlier, Monty, this is just going to make this Caitlyn kind of a liability for most of the game. Svenskeren taking a lot of poke as he tries to come in here.
Well, the thought right now for NL is that he's behind. He knows he's behind on farm. He needs to get an Avarice Blade because, yes, it puts him in a bigger power trough now, but if they can hold on to the remaining turrets, their wave clear is good, especially because of the Sunfire Cape that will at least hold the minion wave and hold Freddy off the turret in the top lane. So I think in general, the itemization, given their circumstances, is fine. But if you only want to win this, they're going to have to take this to 45 minutes, and then they will be able to outscale. And one of the things we always talk about with SK, it's said time and time again, these are guys that don't really ward well. We've seen a lot of lapses in intelligent trinket usage with SK, upgrading them late, holding on to Doran's items instead of swapping them out for wards as you hit the mid and late game. And SK is reliant on a teleport Hecarim engage. When you play Hecarim, you need to be able to use the home guards to maximize the damage. And without wards, you can't TP, as we see Karsa go in.
Yeah, that's right. Forgiven manages to get away. One more hit. It misses, and Forgiven should be okay. A little bit of pressure coming in, but it's all about the Dragon right now as the Flash Wolves move into River. Maple trying to zone as they take a little bit more vision control. This would be the second Dragon for whatever team ends up getting it. Right now, Flash Wolves in position.
Yeah, this could be dangerous, so Svenskr can just tunnel on through, flash out, all the way around, depending on how he wants to do it, to have a go at that Dragon. You can see that 4 versus 5, basically.
Here's
now the
teleport.
TP is going to be coming in from this one. Dragon already down to half HP. Can the Flash Wolves actually take this one away? No, it goes over to SK Gaming, and the fight is on. Sword Art will throw down the Monsoon, and SK, knowing that this is a 4 versus 5, surely going to escape it there, as Fox will get 1 kill. Forgiven will join in with that one, and they get the Dragon and they get a kill. 4 versus 5.
And Svenskr just like walked up and just took it. It was pretty easy looking for him, and Freddy, despite the lack of home guards, was able to get in, get a good engage, and they're just rotating right to the mid lane, taking the turret. I feel like SK is playing this very smart. They didn't pursue that team fight that they didn't need to have. Able to make a lot out of that.
Yeah, Yoey had every chance to just instantly start the Dragon right there. Yes, they are behind, but they did already do the work by chunking out Forgiven in that fight. You can front load damage with the Caitlyn ultimate and with the Xerath ultimate and immediately turn onto the Dragon, and then instead they wait for SK to approach them. They didn't even secure the crab. In fact, they kind of chased the crab right back into SK right there instead of pushing it further down the river, which would have given them a lot better opportunities. So I think Yoey not very clearly thinking about how they can set up these objectives, and it does make it difficult. If Yoey wants to last out this game and they want to get that poke in, just use your ults if you can to just make them scared to even walk in next to you. And we did see a little bit of that right there, but the timing that they created, they made a window for themselves and then immediately didn't use it.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Forgiven was able to walk back to mid lane, recall, and join for the end of the fight just shows you how long they kind of dallied around there and didn't really make things work for them. Stake here, just trying to poke down a bit of damage.
You know, I think a big part of this too is Stake's not really been able to hit those Gnar timings that you really need to hit. He came into that last fight with absolutely none of his bar filled up, and we just saw him die extremely fast because all he really has is that Ninja Tabby and the Sunfire Cape.
Well, he's 50%, and it's hard to get Gnar this way. He did have a great teleport earlier on if Maple had been there, but for every time we see the Flash Wolves try and make a play, they just seem like they're not all quite on the same page. Yeah. We may see a gank coming up in the top side. Svenskr is going to suss this out, though, with that Tremor sense. He's not going to know Sword Art is there.
Oh, knock up and no follow-up. They're a little bit worried. M-rated is right there as well. Stake had that Mega Gnar. Neither team really wanting to engage too much. Freddy getting sunnier. There we go. Karza back onto Svenskr, and the ult comes in from Caitlyn as well. They're going to lock him up, and now can Maple finish him off? It looks like he can. And meanwhile, Freddy coming in from behind. Karza in a little bit of trouble there. Stake trying to get away. The heal from Sword Art will save him, though. And Yoey slowly turning this one around.
Yeah, that Monsoon keeping him alive there. Stake going so close to actually dropping him. No, that was more like it. You were talking about front-loading the damage rather than saving it to try and finish people off. And they throw in the ace in the hole. The Xerath ultimate comes out there as well, and they're able to pick up a kill.
Yeah, it was a near turnaround because the damage is still so low on the Flash Wolves overall. They are playing that more late game composition, but now starting to kick in a little bit here. There's the Void Rush, though, and culling means it's going to be very difficult to take this turret, and SK will hold on in the mid lane. Still a very large gold deficit.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this one finishes off. And yeah, I mean, that Gnar is going to get more tanky. And yeah, I mean, the Xerath is going to be more damage dealing. And of course, the IE done for a while now for NL. But I feel like we're going to see this fight where Caitlyn is just going to get completely run over by everybody on SK. You know it's coming. Sword Art knows it's coming. and he's got to be ready for it as SK pushes up his mid lane.
I'd frankly be more scared if I was Maple.
Oh, that too.
He's the one with the giant crosshair on his back right now. And SK looks like they are just going to back off, so more pressure at least for the moment. And of course, Fox dangerously close to that Zhonya's hourglass, and that's really where the diving in the back line can begin right here. It's going to be a huge power spike for this team, able to easily take out Maple with no real threat. NL's traps this game have actually been doing a lot of work. We've seen him trap a lot of people in these team fights, or at least prevent follow-up engages with them. Saw it in the last fight as well onto Fox.
And true enough. SK pulling it back and playing it a little bit more passive now. Some wards up in the top lane. But Yeo Flash Wolves have a decent amount as well, too.
One thing SK is going to have trouble with is closing out this game, because beyond their fast push, yes, they have a split push, but they have to split push with this composition. They don't have a ranged mid laner. They're running a ton of melee champions out of the solo lanes in the jungle. And so Forgiven's really going to be the only one who's dealing damage to turrets in this situation. He just went back and picked up a QSS as well. So definitely worried about the potential of a Gnar ultimate coming in and knocking him out of the fight. I think that's a smart buy right now.
Yeah, definitely. Svensker a little bit harassed to see who's back into the jungle there.
Yeah, I mean, Randuin's on him. Probably not going to be too worried about that one. Did take a little bit of damage on the way through. We also have next Dragon coming up here in 33 seconds. And you see there the fight over the wards inside of that Death Brush, and that'll be the Yeo Flash Wolves that pick that one up, but quick scan will help things out for SK. They've also got a pink ward in that mid brush, but a little bit scared, I think, of pushing too close to it to take that one down in Svenska, knowing that Xerath could be over the other side. They will put a ward over, though, to see that the Flash Wolves have backed away, and that, with 8 seconds to go, it means that SK Gaming can push up a little bit, get some further vision out there, and start off this Dragon. That's a nice little ward around the corner, though. The pink won't be in quite a range to see that. So the Flash Wolves can see Dragon going on. Stake's not there. TP's available, though.
He's coming in.
That's right, he's going to give it a try. There's a teleport. The Dragon does still go to SK. Oh, NL takes a lot of damage right away. And Sword Art again, trying to use that ult to disengage. Meanwhile, Karza comes back in again and going to get blown up. And there's a kill actually for Freddy. But Forgiven able to do work. So yet again, we see a Dragon and a couple kills for SK. Yeo Flash Wolves, all these Dragon fights have felt very half-hearted. They're like, oh, we kind of need to do something, but we really can't.
Stake had the wave pushed up to the tier 1 and top and was in his exhausted phase, so he couldn't even get Gnar Fury coming into that fight.
Yeah.
Yeo had no business attempting to contest that Dragon under those conditions when they simply could have dealt damage to the top lane turret instead.
Oh.
Stake's teleports have been really hit or miss this game, and it doesn't look like the communication is really there at all to even say what kind of state Gnar is in and if he's capable of fighting in the least.
Yeah.
And he didn't even try to fight. That was the thing. He TP'd in and then tried to walk away. It ends up dying. Could have at least taken, or, you know, the outer turret done damage to it at least, but questionable decision there maybe from the Yeo Flash Wolves, especially considering they've given up the position in the first place on the Dragon. So interesting choice. Yeah, probably one that's going to cost them as well.
Yeah, they're just tunneling on this Dragon right now when they could be trying at least to close this gold gap a little, but they're playing SK's game through and through. And this has been the entire story of this game so far, is SK had got the lane swap and the tempo has been theirs this entire time. It's been purely reactive play from Yeo, and it does look like they're panicking a bit in terms of SK's strategy. It's unusual to play against, and that's the thing when you play against a team like SK. You can say, okay, we watched all the VODs of this, but there's no one who really plays like them. So knowing what's coming and then having that in-game feel for it are two very different things, because you're not going to find practice partners that really play like SK Gaming anywhere.
That's a really good point. A lot of the preparation to play against SK has to be more mental. If you're a team like Yeo Flash Wolves, you know, you don't really get a lot of that feeling that you get in the game. Looks like we've got a little bit of an issue.
Unless you find a practice partner and you say, can you play like SK?
That's true, yeah. Can you just be like SK? Like, oh yeah, sure, no problem, easy. I don't think it quite works like that.
No.
Yeah, we'll get this sorted out ASAP and then back into the game again. But This one isn't quite as one-sided as the first game we saw tonight, but it is still looking pretty convincing for one of our two teams here in Game 2.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it was as one-sided, we'd be about 30 seconds away from the game being over right now. But still, SK only with that outer ring of turrets down. And that, again, it's their composition. They can sit here and comfortably split push, keep pressure on, and then repeatedly take Dragon until they can dive. And that's probably what they're going to do. If they can get the tower damage, it's kind of a bonus. But as long as they can keep their ward line forward, as long as they can keep the waves right at the tier 2s, every time the Dragon spawns, they'll be back there with the advantage easily. Now, what surprises me a little bit here is Freddy did not buy Home Guard yet, which is a really late upgrade when we talk about Hecarim's from other regions around the world. That's usually a very quick pickup on the enchant, and we haven't seen great TP play from Freddy, generally speaking, over the course of this season. That really isn't something that is his strong suit. He uses TP a lot to get back into lane or in the lane swap scenarios, and it doesn't really follow well. But the thing is, I feel that you should not be playing Hecarim if you can't get a good Home Guard engage, because that is his strength right there. So I think against a better opponent that's better skilled in terms of dealing with this split push or setting up, maybe not committing to these team fights that are a little bit difficult for Yeo to win in the first place, it may be a bigger issue. So I'm wondering if he's going to be picking this up down the stretch in this tournament, because I'm not really seeing it. Yes, the split push works, but those team fights happen. You have to be able to home guard and see it in advance. You have to be standing in your base.
One thing I will give him, though, is that he's been there before Stake when they fought almost every time. Had a couple of good ultis in there, and Stake's certainly not been able to match up with him, which is what you expect when he comes in as little, tiny, squishy Gnar and just basically gets destroyed without being able to do anything.
This Gnar, man, this has not worked out. And it kind of continues the trend of Gnars we've seen posts and nerfs. He's spending a lot of time in that exhausted phase. You're just not showing up in the Mega Gnar phase. I think he's been Mega Gnar in like one fight so far this game.
Which he did well in as well.
He did have a very good ult in that fight.
But making that happen, coordinating like that seems to be difficult enough that most top laners worldwide really have kind of given up on the Gnar for a little while.
Yeah, it was already difficult to play around, and now it's even harder. So I think that's... And we know Stake is an Aurelia player that maybe they could have counteracted this split push a little differently besides getting that Sunfire first on the Gnar. And it's just not even going to be in play right now. Also, Aurelia with the earlier power spike as well may have been able to at least create some pressure quicker in this game.
Yeah, definitely true.
That said, we still don't see any trinket upgrades except for N-rated on SK. So a little bit behind, I think, in the warding game. That's been pretty common.
Can always trust the supports, man. We'll get those trinkets upgraded.
Yeah, well, too bad you can't pay for Freddy's upgrade as well, because that would probably help him in his little split pushing endeavor.
It's coming, right? Soon you'll just be able to click on other players on your team and play for them. That's the support dream. It's we need the subjective guys. Or I just make my 80 carry dive.
To buy items for for your friends. Yeah. That'd be cool.
Gift an item to another player on your team.
N-rated could have bought Fox a trinket at the start of the game.
That's true. That's true. Hey, buddy, I see you've forgotten to get your early free trinket. Let me pick that up for you.
See?
Nice
all
guy.
Good.
Yeah.
We seem to have a bit of a problem, I think, with Forgiven right now, which hopefully should be sorted soon. He has rejoined into the game.
What happened was his piercing murderous glare scared his computer into operating correctly. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Not sure you can say he's got a murderous glare.
Well,
I think that might...
I don't know. If you're in lane against him, I think you could describe it as that.
That's how you get into the game, Joe. You have to, really channel your aggression. You
have to have that game face. We need webcams that show the people on the other team what your face is looking at. Actually, that's a terrible idea. Let's not do that. No.
No, I don't think that one's ever going to get passed anytime soon. But guys, we are going back into game here, or actually we
sure?
We did for about 10 seconds, and now we have a pause again. So, yeah.
Oh well. You do look at Stake's hair right now, and it says value hair on his sleeve, and I feel like with only about a third of his hair remaining, we are kind of getting the value version of Stake's former haircut. It's true.
I have to be honest. I did prefer his old afro. I feel like it,
Yeah.
Fit Stake.
It was
better.
magnificent. It was magnificent.
It was a mighty mane. It's true.
Impressive afro. Yeah. All gone now, though.
Not all gone.
Okay, the sides have gone.
All remembered.
And the top's a lot straighter. It used to be really curly afro, but I don't know.
You can't really have just the top stick up when you have a situation like that, you know?
Yeah.
Unless you're just gonna put a lot of like mousse or something in it. Make like a giant mohawk thing. Sounds like a good plan to me.
Do you use mousse, though?
No.
Are you a mousse man?
Well, I mean, I grew up in Minnesota for a certain extent, so yet in that sense, yes, I suppose. But hair-wise, no, not so much. How about you?
No.
No?
I'm more of a natural one. Actually, the makeup lady that we have here today said that I look like I've not slept all night. That was really nice.
She told me the same thing.
She said my eyes were looking really red too. What is it? I don't know.
I think she might have been trolling us then.
Why is she trying to make us feel bad before the Intel Extreme Masters?
Yeah, I actually did turn it around. You know, I can't just take an insult like that without giving one back and say, well, that's what we pay for you for. Come here and make us look beautiful. So.
Wow.
Well, some things can't be fixed, Joe.
When you said turn it around, I thought you meant you were going to be like, no, you look like that.
No, I'm an English gentleman, though. You know, I could never do that.
All natural English gentleman.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Yep, that's right. But you don't really know a lot about Star Wars, though, huh?
No, not particularly.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
You can feel free to talk about it. I'll just probably not have much
It's okay, the real trolling already happened last night, didn't it?
It's true, yeah. We quizzed Crumbs on it, and he did okay. He's pointing at me right now. I'm sorry.
He's
but
getting mad that we're about to tell stories.
No, this is a good example, though, because I asked him who is Luke's father, and he thought I asked Leia. That confused him, but he knew that Luke's father was Darth Vader, so I just wanted that to be known. Looks like we're back in the game, guys. Trying to exonerate Crumbs with this lack of Star Wars knowledge. It's okay. But here we go. Yeo Flash Wolves down a bit. We'll see if they can start to bring things back against SK Gaming at a 6,000 gold deficit here. Calling activated, and here comes Svenskera in action right off the bat. The ult used by Karza. Will he find a chance to jump in? He will onto N-rated. There's the Lulu ult on herself, though. Karza in big trouble, and even Sword Art can't save him. Meanwhile, Maple trying to finish off N-rated. Didn't work out too much. The fight goes into the jungle now, and Fox in a lot of trouble. Whoa, he got out! Steak wasn't quite able to connect with that, and now Freddy chasing again. Meanwhile, another kill for Forgiven off screen, and SK is going to be satisfied with that.
Well, he mistimed actually the Gnar damage right there on coming out of Zhonya's after flashing for it, so couldn't make the play in the end. Fox manages to stay alive, and this is going to be a great opportunity for SK just to move on to that Baron. There's a teleport coming in from Freddy right on the Rek'Sai tunnel.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought they might be a little bit low there, but Freddy coming in full HP. Steak's going to have to be a bit of a hero at the backside here. He's going to have NL and Sword Art coming in with him, and well, Steak's not the hero, and it won't be Sword Art either. It's going to be Forgiven that gets the double, and that is the Baron going down for SK Gaming.
Man, Steak's item build is pretty rare, but his deaths have been well done. SK.
Oh, God.
Sure.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Such a replay of that last fight.
Yeah, replay coming in, and Maple walking backwards. Of course, N-rated, you can't really assassinate anyone while N-rated is around with that wild growth. And beyond the ultimate, we just haven't seen a lot of Maple Xerath in these team fights. There's the dodge with the Zhonyas, and doesn't get the remaining damage. Fox able to flash out of that in the end. Maple trying to lay down some cues from the backside, but Forgiven's positioning again on point this game. And it's just such a pleasure to watch Forgiven play because he knows his limits so extremely well. And you'll very rarely see AD carries kind of absorb an ace in the hole for the rest of their team, see it coming, be able to react so decisively. He just plays so well around everything that's going on in a team fight. He's truly, truly world-class.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch on the ULCS. And looks like we're not going to get anything different here at the Intel Extreme Masters. SK trying to push this mid lane tier 2. Is there anything Yeo can do to stop this?
No.
Nope, guess not.
No, a little bit of poke from Maple, but that's about it, I think. And you know, that last fight is so chaotic, which I think this SK team and just how it's composed actually does really well. And you saw that Maple was on somehow the south side of the SK team. The rest of his teammates were up north. And if he can single out a Xerath like that, it makes it so much easier to kill. No way that he's going to escape. And look at Freddy. He might even try and loop around on this one. SK already moving in towards that inner turret. in the bottom lane, but looks like Freddy's actually been headed off there by Stake, but that's going to be a big culling coming through, and Maple almost got no health left. There is Freddy having a bit of a look, but it might just be scare tactics, and that should be another inner tower.
Oh yeah, it's going to be an easy turret. You can't risk defending that with a Hecarim ready to come over the wall with the onslaught of shadows. And it's just good positioning from SK, and they just continue to do what they've done all season long in Europe, just pushing those turrets. And here we go, Karza coming in, trying to make a play into Svenskeren. The Wild Growth is going to keep him alive. Sword Art pops that out. Freddy gets into the back line. So, whoa, Stake with a big ultimate, but no real damage. Follow-up, double kill already for Forgiven.
Yeah, and Forgiven there, maybe getting a little bit too deep. Actually had to flash in the end, but no real worries for them. They managed again to take 2-0. That's about as far as SK have really got in these fights here, but it just means that they can now back off. The Dragon is live, and this will be an easy pickup. The 4th Dragon, actually, of the game.
Yeah, Flash Wolves getting pretty stomped at this point, it looks like.
Yeah, it just went all downhill. SK certainly in their comfort zone right here, and coming in with some new and surprising pickups, especially this Diana, but something that definitely works with their style. It does make a lot of sense if you're dealing with no Ari, no Zed, no LeBlanc on the table. When you do have this big champion overlap with a player like Maple, and the passive scaling style that Flash Wolves have brought to the table just isn't working out for them. And I mean, if we look right now too at Forgiven's item build, he did go for the Bloodthirster and now into the Mercurial Scimitar, so delaying actually that last Whisper, but there's just not very much armor. Karsa did go for the build straight into the Spirit Visage, but it's double AD threat coming out of Hecarim and Lucian, and I mean, the Sunfire Cape just not offering as much as a Frozen Heart or Randuin's Omen in terms of getting that attack speed down and providing that additional tankiness against a constantly autoing AD carry. So he decided he didn't need the last Whisper. Has been doing great, obviously those 7 kills. I think it's a great item choice in this particular circumstance.
Well, the push again on here for SK Gaming. This is the final turret outside of Yeo Flash Wolves' base that's still available. Are they going to be able to hold on to it? They need to be careful of basically Freddy. That Hecarim coming in from the backside is a scary thought, but look at SK. They've moved straight over to this mid lane, and I think they're quicker than the Flash Wolves here.
Yeah, I don't think they've got a lot to worry about as far as pushing this mid lane goes. Yeo able to jump down the lane against Svenskeren there, stop Karza from coming in with that ult, and there's that culling pop by Forgiven immediately. And right now, all the lanes in jeopardy. Here we go, traps activated. And Fox manages to just dive in and kill NL. That was so fast. We barely even saw it. Wild Growth helping out as well. Lulu Dream Comp, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and I mean, with Lucian there with them, I actually think now 5 versus 4, no Caitlyn, they might even think about pushing this one in. They could go for that inhibitor on the top side as well. A couple of them having to tank up the laser, which is probably not ideal for them. The Yeo Flash Wolves trying to do as much damage as they possibly could there, try and keep SK away whilst they're still waiting for NL to actually spawn back into the game. But I think SK are just waiting for minions to push.
Yeah, they've got so much armor at this point that just walking through the base, taking a couple shots, as long as they can maintain minion wave pressure, is absolutely fine. Forgiven so confident in walking forward right there, not afraid of getting hit by Ebola, considering he does have the QSS.
There goes another turret soon. Oh, Onslaught of Shadows used by Freddy. They try to get the back lines, but it's just not working for Yeo Flash Wolves. A lot of damage done to Stake. He's finally going to become Meganar, but SK says, okay, we can just take the inhibitor on our way out. Fox actually dives in for a little bit more damage, and there's another knock-up. Another kill for Lucian, and SK continues to push their way into the Yeo Flash Wolves base. This one is all but over. Wow, Forgiven just killing people in the fountain now.
Not having much of a problem there, I think, Forgiven. Having to use the Scimitar to get out of a bit of danger, but not really a problem. They're going to leave just one man left alive. The Nexus turret's already down here, and SK Gaming are going to finish up the victory and move through to play the GE Tigers for a spot in the playoffs.
A very convincing game by SK there. They got what they wanted right off the bat, got the split push going. Turrets started falling, and they never stopped.
Well, and that's the challenge now. They find themselves in the winner's match in this double elimination bracket. And seeing how they move forward, against GE, and I'm sure GE thought this was the likely outcome. They looked very prepared in their match against Cloud9, so will they take a different route as opposed to what we saw from the Yeo Flash Wolves, who really couldn't stop SK from playing their own game?
Well, this GE versus SK game that's going to be coming up some point today is going to be really, really cool to see. And if anyone's going to have an answer they can execute, it's going to be GE. That's going to be an awesome game.
Yeah, it should be very interesting because GE also unused to playing against this specific style.
Very
and
true.
I spoke to N-Rated before the game, and they said that they were confident, they felt good. They think that their early game is powerful enough to start that big snowball and just push on through. And we did see some really nice play from him in that last game. Great, really on point wild growths, actually. And again, maintaining pressure over those lanes and using it to great effect.
And it's really great to see as well, of course, this was Europe's current #1 against the LMS's current #1. GE Tigers, of course, will now play as the Korean #1s, the European #1. So now we're getting a little bit, albeit best of 1, which obviously doesn't give you, in my opinion, the big picture of what a best of 5, of course, would. But that's, I guess, the cutthroat nature, really, of a group stage like this.
Yeah, one chance, and that's about it. I mean, 2 chances overall in the group, I suppose. But one chance against a specific team initially, and Yeo Flash Wolves, I think they clearly came into it with a plan, but just weren't able to make what they wanted to work against SK.
Yeah, and again, to point out some scores after that one, Forgiven, of course, stands out as the big one. 10-0-5. Pretty much a full item build by the end of it. And SK, we thought that Yeo Wolves, after saying they were so prepared for this one, they said that they'd actually practiced more than the Korean teams coming into this tournament, which, you know, they'll be seen as a confidence thing. I thought they might have had something ready for SK, but they let them play their own game. Either way, we're going to head over to Shox and the guys to break down that win for SK Gaming.
Thank you very much, guys. SK Gaming coming out with a win here in their very first game. We talked a lot about picks and bans already. Then we dive into game, and it is the lane swap for SK. They can do exactly what they wanted to do straight off the bat.
Yeah, Yeo Flash Wolves didn't prepare properly for this lane swap here. SK Gaming every single time was sent to Forgiven and N-Rated to just push the lane and take down that tower. If you don't react by either diving Freddy in the bottom lane, taking the bottom tower, or sending your support top lane to defend 2v2 and again delay your own tower dying, then you will fall behind. Yeah. What happened was Caitlyn was left on her own against Freddy on the Hecarim, so that was just an even lane. Nobody gained any advantage right there. SK Gaming took the tower top lane, Sword Art was roaming around kind of weird, didn't really know where to be. And in the end, as soon as that tower dies, SK Gaming swaps down to the bottom lane, takes the next tower, and this is how they keep rolling, and you cannot do that.
We'll take a look at a replay from that early game as we do see Freddy actually dying. He gets cut out of position, but that doesn't impede with the way SK Gaming likes to play, as they will react very quickly with a dive, in the bottom lane. We'll get that replay on your screen in just a second, just showing how SK is able to execute what they love to do.
This is just SK at their finest. Freddy will always pull attention and pull aggression from his opponents, and SK as a team will focus their vision and their decision-making around the player that is ahead, and it is always Forgiven. Forgiven does not fail CSing, ever. He's consistently shown it. And if you look at the minimap, you can notice that Sven is already moving himself towards the bottom area of the map. Start rolling the clip out, and yes, Freddy will die, but at the end of it, SK are going to get the tower, going to get a kill, and it's just how SK like to play. They play around whoever is fed. If Forgiven was a little behind, there would have been support for Freddy in this position, but he wasn't. It was with Forgiven, and that's why they went that way.
Yeah, and also just to highlight SK Gaming's mentality and their style, they don't care about kills. It doesn't matter. You can be 0-10 if you're SK Gaming. It's about taking down towers. It's all that matters. You get a global lead in that way, and that's also why you see them completely give up on Freddy's side of the map and say, we don't care if you die, Freddy. As long as you do something, just... Yeah. It's fine, whatever. We're gonna go bottom lane. We saw the push, top lane tower down first, then bottom lane you had a BF sword and a pickaxe on your Lucian to a BF sword only on the Caitlyn. So you're already stronger right there, and that's why they can go for these pushes. So that was a bit of a mistake for the Flash Wolves, and also why they fell behind. It's a mistake, you know what? Mistake, great, I'll take it. He also made a lot of mistakes, by the way, from Steak's side here. There was a lot of bad TPs with no rage on this Gnar.
Speaking of teleports, one of the things that was really interesting was the fact that Freddy chose to not get home guard boots on Hecarim at any point in the game. Now, Hecarim is such a strong champion with the teleport, home guard flanks, especially against a team comp with really fragile backlines such as the Xerath, the Caitlyn, but he never upgraded. Now, what that tells me is that perhaps they're not as comfortable as they should be getting the deep wards, allowing Freddy to get these teleport flanks off. There were some fights where they were able to get some decent deep wards, but overall their style of fighting with the Hecarim was mostly just straight head on, go in and win the team fights in that sense.
I think you're 100% right on that one. It's weird when you watch Freddy play and SK play, because what they do is they push the lane, and then Freddy runs from his lane down towards the dragon. He doesn't recall first. I think maybe that's why it didn't go for home guard, but I agree 100% on your point.
We'll have to come back to that in a minute, because we do have Enrated ready on stage with Chobra to get some insights into that game.
Thank you very much, Shocks. I'm here on stage with N-Rated, the support of SK Gaming, who just won their first match in Group A. So first of all, of course, congratulations. How does it feel to be going into the winner's match?
We feel really proud. Like the first match already took us like a bit of effort just to get here and play in front of such a huge crowd. I think we're kind of settled, and we're looking forward to play more matches and compete on a higher level. I think that our enemies will be pretty strong this time, so we have to do everything we can to improve ourselves in this game as well. We did a couple of sloppy mistakes. They shouldn't happen for the second game. We are prepared, we have our strategy, and we know our picks and bans, so we will do our best and try to represent Europe in a decent manner.
Sounds awesome. Talking about some slip-ups, we did have Fox forgetting his trinket in the very beginning. Did you guys notice and let him know, or is it a little bit of the nerves kicking in for him on this stage?
Obviously, it was the nerves. It's just a huge stage, and I think the first match, something like that can happen. I think his gameplay overall was very good, so it was never the point. He just based, got it, and made up for the mistake, so who cares? In the end, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. You guys put up a spectacular performance. Like you said, just a lot of good communication that we've come to expect for SK Gaming. Now, you spoke about your next matchup. It's going to be a tough one. The G Tigers coming in from Korea. I mean, they're pretty much still undefeated from Korea, and now they get that first win in IEM. How have you been preparing? I mean, is it simply just watching their play, or have you been trying to go back in history for some of these players because they've been around for a long time?
No, I think the history doesn't affect their current play too much. I think we have to watch their current play, the way they play the game, the way they want to approach the game, and we have to find our key to success in order to break the strategy they're using. So we did some research on what they did in Korea and how they played it. We found out what picks they have, and we just try to find a way to disturb them in their own territory, basically.
Sounds fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that match. I hope everyone here is, because it's going to be the #1 seed from Korea, G Tigers, going up against the #1 seed from Europe, SK Gaming. We'll get ready for that winners match in Group A coming up. Thank you once again, SK Gaming N-Rated, for the interview, and back to the expert desk.
Thank you so much, Chobra and N-Rated. And as he said, we are prepared. We got our picks and bans ready. We looked at the games. We looking to defend Europe in a decent manner.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, SK played very well, but again, they weren't challenged this game. I actually think Flash Wolves had quite a few moments that were good. There were misplays on Stake's part, but you look at Sword Art's disengage with his Monsoons, I felt like he was in the right place at the right time. You could make an argument for Maple Xerath. He was always putting damage down. Could he have been in a slightly better position? Maybe. Overall, though, the team fights were closer than I think SK maybe would have wanted. And it's just these small little things that cost Flash Wolves over and over that eventually led to a very big disparity in golden items.
Now, personally, I felt like the Flash Wolves really failed to identify when their team composition was going to come online and really start showcasing the power of the poke from the Xerath, the Caitlyn, the Gnar, kiting with the Q, the Janna disengage, and just started taking a lot of almost unnecessary fights in the early game. What they should have focused is go for the towers, chip away when you can, and just use the Rengar to get picks on the Diana specifically with the Xerath ultimate as the artillery backup, and try to get towers in that way. Instead of going for these really all-out brawls against the strong Hecarim with the power spikes, you got the Diana pushing in the mid lane and the Rek'Sai, who's going to just do a lot more damage than your Rengar.
Yeah, it just seemed like they felt forced to team fight on Dragons, and even when Stake was like pushing his lane, had just used Mega Gnar, had 0 rage, he would still teleport down right in front of SK Gaming and just kind of show himself in mini Gnar and do absolutely nothing. And then they stayed anyway to fight, and that was really the big problem. It's a thing you very often see from teams if they don't feel too comfortable in what their strategy is, and they say, okay, what's an easy solution? There's a dragon, let's go team fight for it. I mean, that's a fairly standard tactic. And it seemed like they felt forced to do it, and that was obviously the wrong way to play that composition, because you got to create a pick first with the Rengar, or you got to land that poke with the Xerath and the Caitlyn, as Crumbs just pointed out. So misplays from them, and that's why SK Gaming could also take the game.
Yeah, and I want to actually just touch a little bit on something SK did today that was different and new from everything we've seen in the beginning of the year, through the rest of the year. The Hecarim and the Diana. We didn't necessarily see the Hecarim to its full potential, the flanking, vision-based team fights, because SK is not really that kind of team. They are a little bit more brute force. They are a little bit more linear. If you're in a lane, they'll go at you. So, but the main thing is, for any research, for any prep that GE Tigers may have done, I doubt this has shown up. This is new. We've not seen it in LCS yet. Was it possible last week? Yes. Could they have been scrimming it last week? Yes. Would GE Tigers have access to the information? I highly doubt it. So this is actually an interesting twist. A game, a successful win, a confidence builder for the team, and the very next match is going to be against the pretty much undisputed favorites of the tournament.
Yeah, it's still a matchup if you look like a GE Tigers and SK Gaming. GE Tigers are so good in terms of their vision control and like the map control they have, especially Gorilla is probably one of the best supports in the world at controlling the map itself. So if you have a Hecarim not running, let's say, home guard in this situation, you're going to spot Freddy run down from that top lane all the way down. You're going to know exactly how to position around it, and that's going to make it so tough for SK Gaming, and that's really going to be the big deal here. If SK Gaming doesn't win the early game in that game, doesn't win the laning phase, and try and really snowball by taking down these early towers, I think GE Tigers are just going to be the better team on the map itself. But I'm not saying SK doesn't have a chance.
Now, one of the things that I'm really curious about, and I doubt that the Tigers will capitalize on it, is that this game we saw the Flash Wolves banning out the Graves and forcing him to pick Lucian. Now, throughout the LCS, Forgiven has picked 3 champions. It's been Graves, it's been Lucian, and the game of Caitlyn. Now, forcing a Caitlyn, she's not a skirmish-oriented champion. Perhaps targeting those 2 bans out, you force Forgiven into a more siege-oriented champion that just cannot provide the same burst and power that a Lucian or a Graves can in the mid-game.
Yeah, we'll see what they decide to go for. Talking a little bit more about SK Gaming, the fact that they had those 3 games that they dropped in the meantime, Forgiven saying, we need those losses, it's good to bounce back and learn. From what you guys have seen, have they learned enough? And will those 2 picks that we've seen been enough?
Well, we need to get the exact ward numbers of this game, because that to me is the only thing that they can show different. The lane swap was standard SK, team fight standard SK, dive standard SK, get Freddy ahead, this is standard SK. I'm a little disappointed in Flash Wolves because the thing is, you don't know if they either didn't research it or they felt this was the counter. You don't know. But as far as SK is concerned, it's just SK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before we can see if SK has really improved compared to when they lost a few games, then we got to see them fall behind early on and then come back in the game. We haven't seen that. The 3 games they lost in Europe, they lost in the laning phase. All 3 games, they were behind like 20 minutes, like 2,000 or 3,000 gold, and that's when they lost. So we haven't seen that yet because they've been winning early game ever since. I need to see what the GE Tigers can do. If they win early game against SK and they manage to bounce back against the GE Tigers, you can say it's very improved and they've learned how to play from behind. But until we see that happening, we can't really say anything.
I think one of the disappointing things about this game is that, obviously the SK is going to have to go for the early game brute approach against the GE Tigers, snowball off that. But the fact that they were not able to use the home guard teleports against such a heavy kiting team like the GE Tigers worries me, because they're going to run the disengage. They've shown it with the Nami, with the Janet. Lissandra can be used as a pretty good disengage tool with all this crowd control that she provides. Same goes with Lee Sin. So if you're not able to be very creative with your engages against the GE Tigers, you're just going to fall flat on your face and trying to close the game out.
Yeah, and SK does have a little time to regroup now, because after the break will already be the winners match between the GE Tigers and SK Gaming. After that, then we will see Cloud9 up against Yeo Flash Wolves. By the way, if you missed the first game of the day, there's a shows C9 versus GE. There's a recap up on the score, esports.com. I can't imagine it being very long, but you should definitely check that out. But we'll be back right after this with the winner match, GE Tigers versus SK Gaming.